this game number one. This is going to be a very nice, fun map. We're going to be on Cliffside. Me personally, I miss this map. I haven't played
Right?
this in a while, and I'm really excited to see it.
Dude, it's one of the best maps they made. Okay, so like
Yeah.
I thought Gorge was creme de la creme when they finally added it. I was praising it,
Mhm.
going, "How did Red Bull get this right?" And it took us 2 more years. Now a year in, I'm like, I'd rather see Gorge go and Cliffside should come back. Like Cliffside to me is a highly competitively viable map. The cool thing as
Mhm.
well is like it's deceptive because you've got those choke points that make it seem like it's campy, but the reality is because you start closer, if you want to all in your opponent, there are options. And maybe even a map as claustrophobic as Cliffside, you can implement those options quick enough that someone won't just pro scouts.
Yeah, you say you say that when it comes to pro scouts, but I feel like every game that I've played over the past week, minus maybe a couple, I've pro scouted literally every single time.
Oh, you're one
Um,
of those.
I mean, it's just one of the and we're going to see it into the game, but there comes a time when your opponent's going to pro scout, and you're like, well, what's the best way to counteract it? You just got to do it yourself. It's like relics, right? You have a nice little mini game in feudal, and then now you have a nice little mini game in castle age. And that mini game, because we're seeing HRE coming out by the way of MarineLorD, we're probably going to see some religious artifacts getting picked up. That's for sure.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing about playing HRE in a Pro Scouts meta. You don't need to rush Castle Age. And here's the
That's
thing
true too.
about playing Byzantines in a Pro Scouts meta. You kind of suck.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. It was a little bit of an indirect nerf to the biz, right? And
Ellie too.
I've even experimented a little bit because I play Byzantines myself. I've experimented a little bit with going hippo and then going pro scouts and just like forgetting.
Oof.
I get it. I get it. Winery is great. I love winery. We all love to wine and dine like the best of them.
Mhm.
But when you see all of those deer carcasses out there, every deer pack is 2,450 food, if my math serves me correctly. Getting an
Yeah.
extra thing out of those berries, getting an extra batch of mercenary units out of those berries, I'm like, I'll
Yeah.
try to go for the deer. And then you
So
gulp afterward. Any gulpers in chat? Hello?
so here's the way I
No?
like to think
Okay.
of it, right? Is like, oil's for babies. All right. Real men want to
Mm,
have that big load of meat, which is what you get out of the deer. You get plenty of that to pump with. What I'm waiting
mhm.
to see is the Hippodrome, 50 scout, Triumph activation, trapezites, torch down the landmarks build. It's going to happen eventually. Probably not here today, because Kiljardi is one of the Byzantines, but and he prefers Rams. But the reality is, like, the concept of what Hippodrome does seems cool, always has, but in reality, it's just kind of poop on a stick, right? Like it doesn't have enough potency in the early age, especially against something like HRE. In fact, I'm kind of like we're having this discussion about Pro Scouts. I'm kind of seeing an issue with Kiljardi's draft. Like, I think Delhi Byzantines as openers really is previous meta, right? Like, if you look at
Mm,
Marine Lords, HRE, Malians, these are very dominant Pro Scout civs. Whereas
yeah.
the first three for Kiljardi aren't. A lot of people like to think that Delhi are Pro Scouts dominant, but actually not. If you pick a civ like HRE, China, etc., Delhi can't keep up because they take 4 minutes to get Pro Scouts, and those other civs get it in a third of the time.
You're 100. It's about the timing, right? It's kind of funny because when we first went into this pro scouts kind of meta, everybody was talking about Delhi Pro Scouts. You're like, you get it for free because of Dome of the Faith. You get all these scholars. You get it faster. Blah blah blah. And China, Zushi, HRE, they're like, hold my beer, dude. Like, I'm just I'm just gonna go and get these scouts before you. The scouts of the Delhi, they haven't even cracked the textbook yet to get professional. And
Yeah.
China and Zushi are already out there getting carcasses. So
No, no, no.
uh,
It's like China and Juji went to advanced university. Atri and Bruce went to, like, what in those colleges, and
mhm.
then Delhi is like stay at home and read the manual and hope it works out, right? But
Are you, are you
they're
saying
trying.
Delhi players are homeschooled? All right.
I mean, this is probably the closest they've ever come to really seeing an elephant. But let's start address the elephant in the room. We kick off on Cliffside, game number one here between MarineLorD and Kiljardi. MarineLorD looking like he may have got the pick to open with a win. Kiljardi, always known to be creative and aggressive, and need to be here.
Yeah, I love watching Kiljardi, man. Just how aggressive he is all the time. And for Byzantines, they have that feudal age kind of stuff, right? With those mercenary units, a lot of tempo. He can really get some kind of feudal age push. But AP, the HRE in that feudal age economy, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, and one thing I was looking for straight away is like the way they leverage it in the other game. We could have potentially been seeing a Rax rush opening here, but it's a little bit of a punt. You never guarantee that the gold is in the right position, and also you kind of set up for a nice time if Byzantines still in their feudal age with the first longbow pump. So MarineLorD hasn't gone for outpost rush. It could have been an option here. The interesting thing about like rushing the Byzantines is you don't rush the gold, you rush the berries. But I don't know, maybe MarineLorD deep in his brain somewhere, maybe deep in their practice, he's aware that kiljardi could do a Hippodrome build. God, it feels wrong to say.
Yeah, and I mean we kind of talked about it a little bit right off before the stream started. Apparently, I'm having sound problems. So KP, take over. I'm gonna fix this.
All right,
I'm fixed.
try again. I think you're fixed.
Awesome. Can I chat?
Which makes
Hello?
it sound like you've just been taken to a vets and neutered, but I think you're fixed.
All right. Well, I don't judge you what you do on the weekends. The with the HRE and MarineLorD, because we talked about their feudal economy, kiljardi going hippo, and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to that area and that tempo of the Byzantines having, you know, the winery and all that kind of stuff, who you got here? If they're gonna try to get some feudal age aggression, because we talked about Cliffside being aggro, where would you put your money?
So I think there's like maybe an aggressive line kiljardi can take here due to the deer spawns, two of them being really tight in the center. But if he wants to be aggressive, you're going to be looking at likely, I want to say a horseman followed up by Lombos. Usually feels quite good. It's just a bit weird because HRE just have so much movement speed with their spear horseman comp. So like maybe the better way for kiljardi to go is like feigned aggression into castle age. Maybe just open up with some jabs or keshiks, poke your opponent, come back. I mean, the value going keshiks here is your opponent actually hasn't added in spears yet. So there is a small window. Like, I've theorycrafted for a while whether Sippy Cups is the way to go here, right? There's the Cat of Fast Castle build. There is, like, a threat to that if your opponent's a mine worker, but MarineLorD doesn't really believe in the mine work. It's very rare you'll see him go for it, as we can see by the Archon coming through.
Yeah, that mine work isn't really working too well for the HRE. It's always Aachen Chapel. Aachen Chapel, honestly, probably one of the best feudal age landmarks, if not the best feudal age landmark in recent memory, probably since October of 2021, honestly, just because of how good it is. And putting that right by the wood line means he's probably going to, obviously he's going to use it as a lumber camp, but he cares about that wooden feudal age. So I'm not expecting that super fast castle here.
No, I'm expecting a super fast pro scouts. You could tell he was going to do it because when he was at 190 gold, he still had free sitting there. He's actually got more gold than he needs at this stage, right? 280 sitting. So might want to pull away unless he's intending to just rush into something extra, like maybe the Broadaxe tech, because this is quite a lot of gold.
Yeah, this is a lot. And obviously, but with professional scouts, because we're going to talk about it over and over on this broadcast, professional scouts is quite an expensive technology. It's 275 gold if you're going to want to do it. So got to make sure, obviously, that prelate doing a good job of inspiring that gold. And with that Aachen Chapel, he's going to get that megaphone and shout his prayers in that 6-tile radius.
Yeah, but apparently everyone's wearing earplugs over the straggler trees and the gold, right? Because it'll be out of range. But, you know, we're going to probably see him shifting over. Beautiful thing is you save on going for lumber because you do have that as a drop-off building. It does mean he can't rush into the Broadaxe that we talked about, though. Instead, survival techniques as a follow-up is just natural. We could even see maybe wheelbarrow, but wheelbarrow just feels weird. If you've got pro scouts, you shouldn't really need it. kiljardi, though, the question is, like, what is the play going to be here? Because he's looking at Limitane, we've seen how bad they can be at chasing pro scouts. It just doesn't work, right? The movement speed is just way too good. Like, actually, if there was a Civ in this matchup that could block pro scouts, it's the other one, right? Because HRE have faster moving spears.
Yeah, and you know, I'm really glad you mentioned it because I feel like that's something that's not talked about enough. I know they got the HRE in that March, they got nerfed. Now in Dark Age, it doesn't count. In Feudal Age, now it just automatically comes to you. And those spearmen, when they're actually charging, I think it's somewhere like 1.56 tiles per second, and a regular knight is 1.62. It's like the spear just gets a horse. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then you can tell these are both Roman empires because the Byzantines gets their own thing for their spears, but they have to wait until age 3, so they just don't really compete. The only thing they compete in is like raw stats of a health pool. Is Limitane have 10 more health, but like you have to think about realistic economies here, right? Like in this matchup, the way it used to work is long feudal favored Byzantines because once you have all the olive groves set up, you're just better economy wise, right? Because if we're 20 minutes in the game, I'm gonna have like a level 4 cistern, I'm gonna have the Grand Winery Groves. It just means I can eclipse your 40% gathering rate. And then also you have to think about the fact that HRE's Archon gets worse as the game goes on because, you lose the value of gathering wood and food. It just becomes one. But that's the funkiness about Pro Scouts. Is like Pro Scouts with all this injection of food means you don't exhaust yourself as quickly. And it also means that kiljardi can't really afford to just start spamming farms.
No, because again, I mean, even though the Byzantines might be able to do it well in terms of an olive grove transition, it's still tempo loss, right? So he's doing a good job pumping out some of these limitane and actually going with javelin throwers instead of longbowmen. So hopefully, I guess he saw the archers of MarineLorD and went for the javelin thrower contract instead.
Yeah, so you can usually tell exactly what a Byzantine player is going to do by their first unit. If they open horsemen, they're going longbows. If they open racks, they're going to be going javelins. And the reason actually makes sense if you just think about it for a second, right? It's like you can either really hard counter one unit type, or you can counter two unit types, right? If you go limitane and longbow, it's kind of weird. The dynamics is like you counter spears and you counter horsemen, but the archers just kind of like kill you off. And then with like archer longbow, the idea is horsemen can dominate the fight because longbows clear the spears. So it's like it's very complementary. And then we don't talk about keshiks because they don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, besides those small, I'll shout out Jigglypuff here with some of his gulping builds. Yeah, you really don't see keshiks too much. But now we're going to see that tempo for the Byzantines really take off, right? Because the first javelin thrower batch is up. The second one is already in queue and getting made. So MarineLorD's probably, if he wants to hang out in feudal age, he's probably going to think about something a little bit more than just archers right here.
Do you ever think about when the screen and screen was implemented for AoE4? The thought was, wow, we're going to catch all the raids and we're going to catch like secondary fights. And then you realize in the current meta, all you get to do as a secondary observer here is watch scouts pull carcasses.
Yeah.
That.
Oh, look at that. Look at that bottom left part of your screen. That scout bumbling, stumbling with that carcass, 350 food. I'm doing a play-by-play on a pink scout.
You know what we need? We need 4 observers so we can watch all of the scouts, right?
Oh my god. Look at the javelin thrower tanking up all that arrow fire. Limitane, I guess. They're going for a little bit of shield wall. You can see the mobility's down just a little bit. And it's kind of impressive, even though a couple of them are going to go down, it's kind of impressive how many arrows they can tank with that wall.
Yeah, but here's the problem, right? You mentioned mobility. That's key here. This is why archers win this, is because MarineLorD can kite you out of range because your javelin's going to like whine and attack and then be disengaged. And the Limitani just kind of have to hard commit. And that clears the way for the horsemen. And, well, do we really need to talk about just how much food MarineLorD's going to have to work with to build horsemen in the next 10 minutes? It's going to be substantial, almost 10,000 food worth, in fact.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot. That's going to be a lot. And you're exactly right with the idea with these archers being faster, right? Because javelin throwers aren't exactly the most mobile unit either, right? They're at 1.25. So with these archers, they're going to be able to, if they want to pick off a Limitane or something like that, they're just going to be able to get the hell out of the way. So javelin throwers, even though they are this archer counter, with the lack of mobility, are they actually in this moment?
Yeah, and the bigger problem is like these javelins are limited, right? You can't scale reboom. MarineLorD could basically just A-click you in a fight, equally trade, and then when both of you've wiped your armies, like who's going to have theirs again soon, right? The guy who needs to go out to the berries is the one who's going to suffer. In this position right now, though, this is not a fight kiljardi can win. He hasn't got enough Limitane here. Like 3 horsemen can peel this. Archers just dive in, Limitane get baited in range, and now, I mean, just 2 horsemen's good enough. Third one comes out. That bonus damage coming in, this is going to be way too good of a trade for MarineLorD.
Yeah, those those Limitane, I'm not really sure what they did because they were going for shield wall, but they went right into the archers. They weren't really protecting the javelin throwers or trying to. So now with that getting cleaned up, KP, we have a military lead for MarineLorD, 25-3. And I don't know. I think the predictions are closed in the chat. Thank God.
It's only a 9x military advantage, right? Like, I mean, kiljardi's got 4 javelins on the way. I've seen like how a Spartan throws a javelin. Surely MarineLorD has got to be scared, or he could be HRE getting ready to go Castle Age while pressing.
And it looks like kiljardi's kind of trying to do that too, right?
Yeah, but his is more dangerous, right?
Right. I mean, MarineLorD has this advantage, right? So he's gained the ability to go Castle Age pretty much unscathed. kiljardi's got to keep playing defense this whole time, and now these archers are going to come in and try to pick off a villager or 2.
Well, we saw what happened last time. There was 2 horsemen to fight the javelins. This time there's less jabs, so they're going to get wiped here and poked on. kiljardi doesn't actually have enough gold to go into the 3rd age. So at this stage, MarineLorD has a huge advantage ahead of him. He's already prepping the prelates in anticipation of being an age up.
Oh man, and that's the most devastating thing when you're playing against HRE too. You haven't really done a lot of damage to them. In fact, you've been hit with a bunch of damage as horsemen are trying to find raids, they're trying to find some of these berry packs. But as soon as you see the HRE hit Castle Age, and then you look at the map and the relics start disappearing, you're like, oh, I am a mile behind.
Yeah, and it used to be kind of felt decent at mirroring and contesting because the Grand Winery gave them access to monks, but this is more of a monk-esque. What? Kiljardi? I think they were trying to defect. They're like, we identify with MarineLorD's Roman Empire, but they are going to come back. Golden Horn Tower is going to get built now. A little bit of a missed rallying there, so he will at least trigger his tech up first. MarineLorD looks like he slowed his down a little bit. Food drop-offs seem weak. I'm not sure what's happening, actually, with MLord's economy. Because he has got deer at home, right? Like, 500 food income a minute doesn't feel like a lot of deer.
Yeah, I thought he would at least have a little bit more. I know that there's some deer packs on the eastern side of his base that he hasn't quite yet picked up. So maybe there's a couple more. Maybe he just ran out and kind of randomly.
Maybe either that or, like, he doesn't have survival techniques. So, like, the amount of people we had was a bit limited. Because, like, usually you expect to already be accelerating towards 1,000 if you really want to force it. Well, tech up is on the way now with 13. He's even getting the distill pick, so it looks like we're going to get a big priority towards gold and upgrading this army. And already Varangian now getting queued up. So there is a small window here for Kiljardi because MarineLorD can't really ramp his good army out at the same speed, right? That's meant to be one of the nice things of Byzantines is those systems, you actually get a very aggressive pump timing similar to the Delhi.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice. I mean, just dissimilar to the Delhi. If you wanted to upgrade your army, you switch one of those cisterns to Dialecticus, and you end up getting those upgrades really quickly. Obviously, Kiljardi didn't have an army to really do that with, but assuming he did, it would be easier. But with those Varangian Guard, the thing of it is, MarineLorD, he's got his economy already set up for the most part. He's already queuing knights, and he already has a bunch of archery ranges. He can just queue up a bunch of crossbowmen if he wants to also.
Now, we've sounded smart so far because we've named 2 of the 3 system effects you can go for. We got Conscriptio, Dialecticus. Can you remember what the other one's called?
Presidium.
There we go. Look at you. Wow.
Oh, my God. But this is going to be a great casting day, let me tell you.
Doctors and their Latin seems to be paying off here.
Oh, yeah. You gotta know the root words of stuff, man. Because you get hit with a bunch of lingo, right? And you're just like, I don't know what the hell that means. So you just break it apart. You know? What does Presidium mean in Latin? I have no idea. However, I do know that those buildings get a little bit of a defense. That's all I know.
And it becomes useful when you're a doctor, right? When a guy comes in, he's like, oof, got hit by a car. Clearly didn't activate your Presidium. And then, boom, he's got no response to that. He should have listened to the doctor. So, looks like Kiljardi's going to be in need of a doctor, though, because his army looks slightly overextended here. There is a move out into the berries, which means this is hotly contested because MarineLorD, he just moved in for the deer. It's about to turn into a double jackpot.
Yeah, and I mean, look at the amount of javelin throwers versus the amount of archers, right? I mean, these javelin throwers, I get it, they're good. One, they're still in feudal age, and now they just hit that veteran upgrade. But MarineLorD is all over the map, KP. He was trying to get relics. That monk said his last prayer. And now these archers, even though, you know, the Varangian Guard might be something that could deal with those archers, but it looks like with how much damage those archers have and the mass that they are, they're going down more quickly than you might expect.
Yeah, and he doesn't have undermesh too, right? Look what MarineLorD just got. It's the 2nd level, so these archers are going to be even more impactful. Frontline already gets mopped up. Javelins are becoming kind of irreplaceable. Any loss is unacceptable at this stage. And you're going to experience losses. It's 4 knights, 7 more queued up for MarineLorD. At this stage, we're just waiting for Kiljardi to make that little death squeal that you get out of a piggy, you know, like, and done.
Well, I mean, you just watched archers chase down a javelin thrower and pick it off, and you're like, what am I watching? What's going on? But that just shows the power of upgrades, and especially in the ranged variety, making sure your undermesh is iron, making sure that your rivets are wedged, right, for that +2. If you don't have that, you're gonna get destroyed by these HRE archers.
Yeah, and then you have to take the right angles to give you full surface coverage on your opponents, and it's just chef's kiss from there. I mean, you can really just see how MarineLorD is starting to bloom in this particular matchup, and I'm not really seeing the way that Kiljardi can insulate himself to stay in this game.
Right. I mean, it's just, even though, especially now, he doesn't want to give tempo of groving, right? So he's going out for these berries and try to get some units. I understand with the Golden Horn Tower, it's supposed to give you a little bit of tempo, right? In getting those free units. But I don't care if you're on Cistern level 3, if you're on Cistern level 13. They're not going to come out fast enough for you here.
No, at this point, it would require MarineLorD to basically just get up and do jumping jacks for a little bit too long, which I've seen MarineLorD. He's not exactly the most athletically fit, so I'd say like 20 jumping jacks should be enough to exhaust him. If kiljardi can convince him to do that, okay, there is enough time. GG comes out, game number 1. Kind of the expected outcome here. MarineLorD with the HRE, able to get a dunk.
Yeah, that was honestly for the HRE, it looked relatively simple from MarineLorD, to be honest with you. You can look at resources gathered. Look at this chart. Look at this wonderful chart that we have here. Everything you could possibly need about that game. The one thing about MarineLorD, 0 olive oil, so he was not greasy in this matchup, but it did not matter.
No, we said oil's for babies, and now kiljardi's left crying like one game down already.
Oof.
MarineLorD literally and figuratively off the charts in this one. We do get the color switch around, just to clarify for people. Pink, emerald, thumbs up. But, we've got issues on the draft that we talked about, right? And I need to see some solutions quickly. Otherwise, we could be looking at 3-0. We already mentioned when we were assessing that draft, it felt like MarineLorD's made sense for the current meta, whereas kiljardi's felt a little bit outdated with these high pro picks like the Byzantines not proving as impactful as they would have just a few months ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this was, honestly, I feel like this was the kind of battle that set the tone for the rest of the game. And it was 9 minutes in, 9.5 minutes in. You see those Limited just getting absolutely picked off. 2 or 3 horsemen against all of those javelin throwers. I get it. The javelin throwers have a decent base damage. Maybe they could pick off an archer or two. But the big problem with these mercenary units, and why I'm not the biggest fan of javelin throwers, is it feels like you can never get enough.
Yeah, but that's meant to be the crux, right? Is like they're great for some transitional type play. But I agree. Like, the way you have to treat your mercs is that they are a finite resource. They are an incredibly valuable resource. But that's also why you see most people don't go Keshiks. If you just break it down to a simple conceptual layer, range versus melee, right? The mercenary choices, most people are going jabs and lombos because at the end of the day, you can afford to lose your cannon fodder replaceables. That's Limitane, that's Horseman. Can't afford to replace Keshiks, right? So like that's why you typically see people always go for these range units, and positioning really matters. Like I think at this stage, most players have reached a stage where they're happier using those first mercs to get castle age comfortably. You never really saw that coming out. And now, game number 2, you'd think there's some potential. Mongols versus Japanese is a matchup that if you ask players about a year ago, they would have said Mongols pretty hard count as Japanese, right? Like you can't go Kura, burn farms, they're great at dot blocking. There's a certain ninja hidden somewhere in the room, though, that we need to address. Shinobi changed this matchup quite a bit. Mongols typically have multiple issues with it because obviously Shinobi are great blockers to Keshik and Spearman. And on top of that, usually you want to place your production around the Uvu, which means it's actually susceptible to some subterfuge.
Yeah, absolutely. Those Shinobi, and you're telling me it's hiding around the room. Don't even bother looking for it because I don't know if you guys realize it's a ninja. You're not going to find it, dude.
I mean,
okay.
It must be a good ninja to be hiding in our rooms considering how all white our rooms are, right? Like,
yeah, with the black clothes that it has,
right?
The ability to be a chameleon and just blend into the wall is absolutely unbelievable.
Maybe like is it like double-sided wrap? So it's black one side, white the other. So he has like the ultimate reflections. That's the only way I can figure out how they dress up as enemy villagers instantly. Is like it's just pretty much a flip it and wear it again sort of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, either that or they're carrying a bunch of gallons of paint with them. Because like there's no other way to change your colors that quickly.
With
and if
like
you're doing
stencils, so you get the right trim.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're holding all these gallons by Johnson and Johnson, you're probably not going to be able to use your, any of your ninja skills, and your mobility is going to be decreased. But man, we're talking a lot of nonsense, aren't we? Kurlager.
Should we bring it back to the more nonsense? Have you ever like watched and we'll probably get to it in this game because I'm expecting Shinobi. Have you ever watched a Shinobi swing his sword and think, man, does that look like a 4-year-old with a butter knife? Like they just kind of go, right? Like I could actually just imagine him. Like you could pretty much put a piece of toast in front of his animation in the game, and it would fit. It's not very frank.
And the best thing about it, KP, and you might think, yeah, 4-year-old with a butter knife. Somehow it's 20 damage. Riddle me that. You know, like it's massive.
Because you
It's
didn't
insane.
think it would be impactful. That's what happened. You undervalued the potency of that ninja strike, right? It was like, when people watch One Punch Man, it's like, what can this puny mother ducker do? And then he just blows your chest, cavity wide open. Well, let's see if there's a cavity search waiting from kiljardi in game number 2. MarineLorD leads early. We head into Kalauga for Japanese up against kiljardi's Mongols.
You know, I'm not really sure how players think about this map, Kurlager, but I think it's incredibly interesting. I really like having those 2 pawns there that you can actually walk through, and the sacred sites being there. It creates that little bit of chaos. You know, we talked about the Shinobi a little bit. I've even seen some Japanese players, like maybe they get a dock, their dock ends up going down. They put a farmhouse there, and they just periodically drop off with fishing boats. It's the kind of chaos that you don't really see in some of these hybrid maps that are, you know, just one giant body of water, like a holy island, for instance.
Agreed. And you know, it's interesting because there's a lot of extra manipulation you can do, that fishing house drop-off interaction, right? It's like other civs can do mills. I've seen China supervise those mills and get additional. So there's some hidden layers of mechanics there with fishing. And like the interesting thing, though, is while Japanese would usually look at that as a comfortable move to make, they can't do it on this matchup, right? Because Mongols will torch those houses down and get paid for the service. So MarineLorD, instead, his goal should just be to try and find a tech up after some initial harassment. Usually we've been seeing scaling Shinobi now, usually around the range of 3 to 6. That forces an archer reaction, which is perfect for Japan, because then if you rush Castle Age, you're going into heavy cavalry anyway.
Yeah, and even in feudal age, like, if someone's going to make archers, you don't really mind going with a stable and a couple horsemen, just because, like you stated, it's going to transition you into Castle Age anyway, right? So it definitely plays into their hands, so to speak. Now, for the Japanese versus the Mongols, I think one of the big things that we got to harp on too is why people pick Japanese on water in the first place. You know, obviously the docks are full price. It's not like Iabids or Bassids. However, those fishing boats are pretty cheap, right? They're 45 wood each boat. So that really helps that tempo to get to feudal age so quick, where those Shinobi make an actual impact. So I think everything, as far as their naval economy and military goes, it synchronizes pretty well.
Yeah, and the logic is you can have up to 2 extra fishing boats compared to any other civ at that stage, right? And feel good about it, which means you're returning the cost of the initial investment quicker. You're admittedly spending more to do so, but it amplifies, right? That's the value play. Interesting detail at the start here, by the way. Kiljardi has to swallow sadness as Mongols, because you may notice that TC looks like it's allergic to trees, right? Like this guy has a pollen issue, because usually as a Mongol player, you want to put your TC on the tree line. The issue on Kalauga is the tree lines spawn a little bit further away. You can even see it at MarineLorD's base. So it's not as easy of an option to exploit compared to, say, a dry Arabia.
Yeah, and even if you wanted to get that big, I'm going to call it a forest on the left side, that big bushel of trees over there, your gold is so exposed, right? So putting that in the middle, I guess he's just trying to, you know, kind of save face on both sides. But there's an ability, you know, if you wanted to get that small bushel, maybe to unpack there. So Khan, definitely one of the most, I don't know how your opinion is, KP, but one of the most annoying units, probably besides the king, coming in and take pot shots at that villager. Hearing that attack notification go on and on over and over again, it's such a tilting experience.
I can't handle it. It's outrageous. I mean, you know, this guy is always up in your face. And then also you get those snaky fast castle boys. That's when you really regret it. But no, it's a nice little mechanic for the Mongols. The hilarity is at this stage, quite often the Khan gets used more aggressively for his arrows than his signal arrows. I've seen way too many fights where people just forget to activate them, and all of a sudden this guy is just watching himself on spears. So Kuka is going to be coming in. Deer Stone response is correct. You need this to kite your opponent. The awkward part is usually the Deer Stone feels best after an outpost rush. We don't have that in this game, which is unfortunate, because if you look at the spawn, MarineLorD did get a Ford Gold, which, to my understanding, I think it's almost guaranteed on Kalauga that your gold will spawn towards your enemy.
I mean, based on the spawns, right? Yeah. You always have what Cow said in my ear, making us look so good, him and Vodka in the background, saying that there's one in the front and usually one in the back, but the back one is obviously a little bit farther. So you have a nice secondary gold. That's a little bit easy, but that first gold might be compromised now at the 430 mark with both of them coming up. It looks like we have a little bit of a wall coming out here. I think that's a pink wall. That's a MarineLorD wall, and he's going to see that dock.
It's really important that he mocks the Mongols, letting them know that they can't build walls, right? This is a morale wall as well. And it is going to obviously trap kiljardi away from his safe resources, which means now when the Shinobi comes up to contest, burns the dock, you don't actually have a way of getting your fishing boats back to safety. So yeah, a little bit annoying for him. MarineLorD already has the archer ship coming to make sure it's a guaranteed killer, so kiljardi won't be able to react with some land units to protect him. And with just 2 Shinobi, there's no way that the docks will be able to protect you either.
And he, in absolutely perfect timing, KP, as soon as we got the notification that kiljardi hit feudal age, that dock got instantly sabotaged. So it's like, if you want to make any kind of navy, tough luck, pal. So kiljardi's going to be going in a little bit of land, going with 2x Kashyyyks to start.
Ooh, Kekek time. So this is where it gets interesting as MarineLorD. If he goes up to 4 to 5 Shinobi, you can actually kite the Kashyyyks and kill. Because the whole idea is you basically cycle your Shinobi out as they get hit, and Kashyyyks just melts, right? It's 145 health unit with, I believe, 2 melee armor. Meanwhile, Shinobi hit you for 23 base. It's pretty easy. Sorry, 25, right? It's 23 off on this occasion.
And, you know, they're going to try to do something, because you talk about having 4 to 5. Having a nice archer ship in the background might be beneficial, but they do get a charge on one of the Shinobi, and it blinks out of existence, KP, and goes ahead and kills a wolf.
Yeah, like, because you know that basically it's not enough to be the big dog in the fight. You need to make sure you're the big dog in the woods, and that is a misclick from kiljardi. He didn't click far enough away. To see how brutal this is, though, the other thing is the attack speed is just so good on Shinobi. It only takes 6 hits to kill a Kashyyyk.
You know, this dock going down, I mean, we saw some of these Kashyyyks go down too, and this little ninja brigade will be running probably to the opposite side. Kiljardi's trying to counter raid himself back into the game, but KP, look at the eco lead. Like, it's 32-24 for Japanese, and you're counting some of those having fishing boats as well. Yeah. I hate calling games before the 7-minute mark, but
I don't.
This is devastating.
Speedrun the series, man. I mean, we've got Yumi getting added in, which isn't a confidence play. It's just a smart play here. The Shinobi just complicate the unit dynamics in the other game. Shiv's out as well on the tree line. Kashyyyks trying to commit in. MarineLorD is microing away a little bit too slow there, and his spearmen can't attack. We'll get through in the end. So finds himself some worker kills there, but very expensive losing Kashyyyks at this stage in the game. And also, you know, Yumi kind of gets looked at as a meme, but it really isn't a memeful unit. The cool thing about Yumi is you just have a much better ability to flood than your opponent. And it also makes the castle transition for Japanese scarier.
Yeah, it does, because I've noticed with Yumi, I mean, in feudal, if you make this some kind of mass Yumi kind of situation, and you're sitting there on 30 of them, because they're cheap, right? They're 30 food, 35 wood, right? So you don't need a lot of wood in order to do it. Oh my God, are those ninjas or villagers? I don't even know who they are. Oh my God.
Hey, we're the relief crew. We're here to do some of the chopping of people. Takes out 2. Decides screw the Gur as well. Makes his way out. One of the Shinobi is going to die, but a worthwhile raid there. And one that's just going to buy reactionary, right? Like, kiljardi is going to have to see this and contest it further, which is going to buy more time for MarineLorD to build up the next layer of his comp. A lot of spearmen, admittedly. Might want to just focus on doubling down on archers at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing about the Yumi, right? Like, you have to mass a ton of them in order to do the damage to the Kashyyyks that you really need to. Plus, with those Kashyyyks using their vampiristic trait, right, and getting that +3 every time they hit something. So, getting, like, I get you need the spearmen for the Kashyyyks, but you're going to need a solid amount of Yumi if you're going to make a difference.
So, I think what MarineLorD maybe done here is he sipped the Kool-Aid, looking for maybe a value play in the Katana Bannerman, because Katana Bannerman does buff the Shinobi as well, which is the best unit if you could realistically buff it in Feudal Age. Because double rank seems a bit overkill here, right? Like, your goal is to scale Yumi. We're finally seeing the Horseman, which is typically what you want to be doing anyway, because, you know, if you had to measure what comp Mongols do the most, I feel like this is the one, Kashyyyks Archers. So yeah, a little bit surprising that MLord felt a necessity to build double racks.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have went with the stable probably before the archery range, to be honest with you. I mean, I know maybe you're thinking, you know, these Yumi aren't exactly a meme unit, but when you have 3 of them running for their lives against Kashyyyks, this looks pretty memey to me.
But that's why we built double racks now. See, this is the thing, right? The spears can protect you, but the TC is going to do that anyway. MarineLorD, I mean, he's got a healthy economy lead at this stage. Not rushing the age up. I think he could have got away with it. It's just, it would have been a bit risky with the 4 gold. So we do have a lot of wood gathering coming through now. He has paused Yumi production entirely. It seems like MarineLorD really did think it was going to be spears, and now that archery range just feels like a waste.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in Castle Age, in order to salvage it from being a waste, you have a potential to get Onimusha if you want to, but that's pretty much a long way away. MarineLorD, not really on gold at all. He's been on 0 minute for a little bit of time now. So this Horseman and Spearman composition, not only is he going to outscale the Mongolians, even though they get that ×2 production out of the Uvu, it's just because of the fact that he's continuing to have fish, KP. Look at his food per minute.
Yeah, it's weird though, because one thing he's skipping on by doing this type of build is the thing that Japan leverages really well with this comp, melee, right? He's not getting the Forge Techs, he's not getting the Uma Bannerman, right, or Katana Bannerman. It's like kind of missing out on a lot of potential damage scaling here, and you're already seeing it come from Kiljardi. Steel Dowers gets queued up, however, he overextends and will be punished for this. Archers can't really be defended. Keshiks are trying to do their best, but the archer ship now stabbing from the other side means Kiljardi is going to lose the bulk of his army here in the retreat.
And the Khan's dead, so you can go ahead and put GG's in chat, ladies and gentlemen. Spearman probably not going to catch up to those Keshiks, but that's the beauty of those horsemen. If you have those weak Keshiks, you might be able to track them down, especially with a Khan that doesn't have deer stones. And you know, KP, we kind of saw this in game number 1. It was just a little bit of a Kiljardi overextension. Maybe he felt the pressure behind him. He felt like he had to do something, but I don't think he was equipped to do it.
Yeah, I think if he missed the simple low-hanging fruit, he felt this need to kill, to live up to his name, right? And I've seen this from Kiljardi. He can play defensive, but when he gets the idea that aggression is his best friend, it's that best friend that gets you drunk across a 24-hour stint to the point that you're vomiting down the street, and then you catch him later on giggling at it all. He's recorded it all, right? And uploaded to YouTube. And it's an embarrassing moment. Like, what we're getting at here is, like, Kiljardi, sometimes that inner monologue saying, go all in, it isn't weighing up the value of that play, right? Like, what is the downside of me getting this drunk? It does cause the vomit. He doesn't see that. And I think this is where it's hurt him. Is like, he saw MarineLorD scale into Yumi spears. At that stage, just take a chill pill, because you've already made MarineLorD's comp really weird.
Yeah, and I think no one is there to hold Kiljardi's hair back in this particular situation. Military count 33 to 15. Now starting to add Yumi a little bit. I think MarineLorD heard you, KP, because Tatara's coming in on his side, so get a little bit of that extra increase. Now, in this situation, when you have Keshiks here, I mean, obviously Spearmen are going to be useful for you, but do you mix in a little Onabugisha? Do you mix in a little Samurai? Do you get a little tricky with the Japan infantry build here?
Not really. It's still really food expensive, and you've only got shoreline fish, and you don't have Kura, right? Like, I find Onabugisha is really, really difficult to do without Kura Storehouse. So, like, better move here is just keep scaling the Spearman, the Yumi, and then eventually you can just transition if need be. But if you don't, like, once you have all your melee techs, of which there's 2 up for grabs at this stage, you get Uma Bannerman. And then, all of a sudden, your horsemen are almost hitting as hard as Keshiks.
Yeah, the amount that an Uma Bannerman really could do is crazy. And the fact, I mean, even just that unit pound for pound, right? It still holds its own. Not only with all of the damage boosts and all that kind of stuff that it does, like, it still hits like a truck.
What, the Uma Bannerman? Yeah, he's a pretty lofty bugger. He also has more health than standard Mountain Samurai. Like, at this stage in the game, he has 200 and I think it's 30 HP on an Uma Bannerman. Goes up to 270 in Castle. So always ahead of actual real knights. It comes at a cost slightly less damage. But, like, your point, at this stage of the game, like, having 230 HP, that makes you ridiculously tanky. Not even feudal knights have that much health.
Right, and the front line against what Kiljardi has, right, with the Keshiks, you know, it's not like he has Spearman that's going to take that Bannerman down very quickly, but Kiljardi, again, he sees that all-in situation. He's trying to take another shot before he throws it back up, and it looks like he's going to fight under that outpost. Spearmen are getting in on the Keshiks, the front line, and now he's got that Yumi mass to start picking off some archers.
Yeah, problem here, though, the Yumi don't actually have their ranged upgrade, so Kiljardi probably getting the best fight he's gonna. If this isn't good enough to make it work, nothing will be. And we're already seeing the front line starting to get mopped up. Keshik count, still looking healthy on the front side. He microed out all of those archers. That's all MarineLorD wanted. So he is continuing to scale this Yumi. If he can survive this wave, we start to reach that threat point of 30 plus Yumi that was mentioned earlier, where you can just go Castle Age, and these things can run through everything.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at that battle, face value, you're like, oh, Kiljardi, you know, that was pretty good. You know, he was able to take out the front line. There were spears, there were horsemen there. You know, Keshiks are still alive. We're still at 43-9 in terms of military count. So, like, while this was going on, not only did no Yumi die, but I think they just reproduced by mitosis.
Yeah, pretty much like the bow fell to the floor, and that bow then grew into a new Yumi, and then there was still natural Yumi. But that's kind of how it feels sometimes with this Civ. It's just so cheap and efficient, and that's what it comes down to, right? Is like it's quantity versus quality. And in this situation, quantity is taking a giant dump on quality. Even with him failing to keep up, like you have to keep in mind, he attacked into undermesh without stilled arrow. So these Yumi barely register their damage in reality. They're having 20% taken away immediately against those archers. And it still wasn't enough for kiljardi.
Yeah, I mean, it was a it was a stereotypical death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? With all the Yumi that were there. I mean, it's kind of nice too because a lot of those Yumi were targeting those archers in the background anyway, right? So they didn't really have too much. Now MarineLorD starting to use a little bit of a navy on both sides of Kurlager, right? And this is the devastating thing about not having a fishing economy. As you can see, some of those Keshiks go over to where kiljardi has a lot of those deer that he's trying to get. He has to put so many villagers on food. Well, MarineLorD doesn't really have to do that and still gets 1,800. Pulls these out from harm's way. Those 4 or 5 Keshiks aren't going to do that devastating value to get you back into this game. He needs a lot more.
Yeah, he's just not finding the raid moments here. And you can already see MarineLorD, although he's producing, he's starting to stockpile, right? So we could realistically be seeing Castlage by about 18 minutes, 18 and a half for him. kiljardi's stuck. It's like, really, it comes down to MarineLorD. Does he give you a lifeline of existing for 2 more minutes, or does he end you now? And apparently, he's going for the latter. We've got to march forward here. Decent amount of spam in the mix, a lot of Yumi, and they have the steeled arrow this time. Still, no Bannerman to go with. But if there's another fight afterwards, he has already queued up Daimyo, so it will be there for the next engagement. Pushes the archers away. Keshik line is practically dead. This looks done.
There were no archers in this. The Khan's dead again, so we're waiting another 2 minutes for that 3rd generation of the Khan. But look at how many archers that were there. There were 5 or 7 archers there trying to take down spearmen. Not going to happen. kiljardi says, I'm done. Let's head over to game 3. Maybe I can reverse something out of this. But his chances are looking kind of slim. Taking a look at some of this graph here, and you can see the food difference. That's the one thing I want to highlight, KP. One had water, and one didn't. So there you go.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting with that in mind. Why did kiljardi not go for the outpost rush is what I'm wondering. Like, the Rack's opening has always felt like a solid way for Mongols to begin the game. The weird part is, even without it, the Japanese still went for the Yumi play. So maybe kiljardi, in practice, has already attempted that and seen that we've iterated through. It's interesting that Japan is just a civ that's seen as weak economically in feudal age, but you got a water hybrid map, all of a sudden things just drastically change. And I mean, you mentioned it in that it wasn't exactly like this big one punch man moment with the amount of samurai builds. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Or I like to imagine it a different way. I think the Yumi was shooting so many plastic arrows at those Keshiks that eventually the weight killed them because they couldn't move anymore.
the amount of arrows, just the sheer weight of them was too much to bear. I could definitely see that. And you know, with that tempo that Japan gets in feudal age, just with the Shinobi, it just sets the tone, right? Like, this is an idea or a matchup where, like you talked about before this started a year ago, the Mongols were the one that were setting the tone right through all of it. Now you have these Shinobi. Are they villagers? Are they Shinobi? We don't really know. Looking at this, oh, they're ninjas, sorry. And a couple of them end up killing some more villagers on the back end. So
wait, is this
just
the
being
equivalent
able
of catfishing in the medieval age?
Oh God.
Like, you think you're going to meet up with your fellow workers, and it turns out it's actually a ninja?
Oh my God. And there's no, I mean, you're not going to be on MTV in the 1300s, that's for sure. So who are you going to tell about it?
Now,
right?
Russell Brand isn't going to turn up out of nowhere and go, wow, how do you feel about this experience? If he did, you'd already be crying. I mean, this has been looking pretty brutal. I think the Yumi switch from MarineLorD almost looked meaningful. Actually, like, at one stage, it looked like it was going to win in the game, and then there was this weird off transition. But the reason it didn't matter that he went double racks in that early phase and it looked like it was going to be bad is because he already got set up by Shinobi. Like, the difference in this matchup really is the Koka Township. If you think about these unique type of units, it's the same with something like a Dervish, really, right? Like, and Desert Rays when they first came out. They break the natural triangle of counters and completely flip the way you have to address the matchup.
And how, like, that's so huge, right? Because when you're learning Age of Empires 4 to even start, I remember when this game came out and I'm learning about it. In Feudal Age, you're like, okay, there's rock, there's paper, where scissors. I've played rock, paper, scissors, since I was in kindergarten, so I should be able to figure this out. You pull a Desert Raider into the equation, or you pull a Shinobi into the equation, you're like, what fresh hell is that? That's rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, or something like that. Isn't that from Big Bang Theory? I don't know. But for how many things that you have here, it just becomes incredibly difficult. And look at this very last fight. Obviously, the military count was high for MarineLorD and the Yumi, but the lack of archers on the opposite side, Keshiks are just going to get absolutely shredded.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? Like the way he won this was simply by treating Yumi as the trash they are and trading them out with the archers. Like this was a matchup where the spear was the king. So his goal was always in these fights. You saw it there. He literally ran them into the Keshiks intentionally so he could hit the back line. But also the added effect is then sometimes the Keshiks are attacking Yumi, which sounds like a good thing, right? No, because now the spears are living longer. So a little bit of a rotten egg moment there for kiljardi, and maybe leaving a vile taste in his mouth. But there might be hope, Tim, right? Because Malians hate Delhi. There couldn't possibly be a meta going on right now that Malians are better at Delhi than doing.
Yeah. Well, wait just a minute. There is a meta going on right now. That's a little bit. And that's wait a minute. That's professional scouts.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the two DC Malians. Oh, thank God, we dodged that bullet. Yeah, so Pro Scouts meta, we're on a very Pro Scouts map. Bold Land is like one of the best for it. Very raid heavy, so there is potential there for the Delhi, right? Because they have the Ghazi. It's tricky though. Something that Malian players have kind of woken up to is that building Sofa in Feudal Age isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad idea to mirror the initial Ghazi. It scales really nicely if you get the third age. And the scariest part of this, the Delhi, can you guess what it is, Tim? Something that Malians can suddenly do with Pro Scouts.
Something that Malians can suddenly do.
Other than win. That's the obvious part. But
right, that's what I was going for.
Leads to the winning. It's the Farimba.
The Farimba. Interesting.
Which has Imba in its name. So we may have overlooked something there all along.
Man, do you remember those back in like season 3 Farimbas when you had warrior scouts and then you just used them essentially? Nobody like, but you know what the crazy thing is like, I don't remember them going pro scouts in season 3. I just remembered a bunch of warrior scouts that were providing a lot of damage because of the healing that they had. Yeah. Right. And then all of a sudden you're pumping out units 5 at a time with Farimba Garrison. And the worst thing about it, oh my God, I can't tell you how many casts I complained about this. You could make anything out of it. I'm so glad they changed it, right? The amount of tempo that you got to get all of those different units, you could just make the counter and you don't have to sacrifice the wood for a production building or whatever. Now, with Farimba, it's a little spicy. It adds some spicy units to it. And, with the choices that you have the Javelineer, you have the Freeborn Warriors, I remember. Is there one that you have that you kind of pick as a favorite or that you like to see?
Freeborn is like the most busted because of stats, right? Like, I'm going to be boring and say big number better, right? You have 175 health, 5 ranged armor, you move quite quickly. Like, these things just don't die. They're very cheap too. I've watched some depressingly obnoxious games where it's like, well, they're not killing your economy, but like you have to run from them, right? Yeah. The other scary one is something that I've been expecting to make Fitzy here come back to AoE 4-4, which is Mansa Mizafadi. Oh my dear God, this unit. So Mansa Mizafadi, when you really do the maths about it, you realize how kind of silly it is. So 5 melee base armor, and then you can scale upwards to 8, and then Elite Army Tactics gives you another 4. So you can get 12 melee on that thing. And it's considered a trash tier unit, right? But like the raw HP, it makes anything but trash. You kind of feel like you got a pseudo English men at arms at that stage.
And I think what the difficult thing is, I only have 20 seconds, so I'm going to make it really quick, is you see some of those units, and these Mansa Muzafati, like, you think they're regular Muzafati. Or the Freeborn Warriors kind of look like Muzafati. I remember the first time I played them, I was shooting a bunch of archers, and I'm like, what is this unit? Like, why am I not killing this unit? It turns out it just takes a million arrows, and let's see if we see a Farimba out of a MarineLorD. Game number 3, match point for MarineLorD, coming to your monitors, phones, refrigerators, wherever you happen to watch this delectable piece of content. We got Malians versus Delhi, KP.
Refrigerator might be appropriate because it looks like MarineLorD's getting ready to put kiljardi on ice here. 2-0 already up. We head into Boardland for potentially the last game of the series. Now, on paper, Delhi have looked really good against Malian's team, but we're dissecting a few of the reasons why Malians have some outs here in the Pro Scouts meta. So curious to see how kiljardi is going to open. Likely we're going to be looking at Ghazi. The interesting thought is like Malians are a civ that don't like getting outpost rushed. Unfortunately, Delhi may be the last civ I can think of all the possible ones that would outpost rush you.
Yeah, I mean, the Delhi used to, for that first, like, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 minutes, something like that, when they're getting their Dome of the Faith, they're trying to get their production buildings. They just want to be left alone. They're not trying to interact with you. You're not trying to interact with them. And you just kind of have a little bit of a peace treaty, right? So once you get those scholars going, once you get all of those technologies that you need, then you really take a fight. I'm wondering if kiljardi just kind of goes back to old school against the Malians and just, hey, maybe there's a Tower of Victory shenanigans going. kiljardi is that aggressive player. Maybe he can get feudal with it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm looking at this. I gotta say, MarineLorD's spawn looks uglier than my cat after it chose to have a fight with the neighborhood dog. Right? He's got double Fort Gold on the south side in the same area. So, like, if Delhi do want to leverage aggression, this could be really painful for him. He didn't luck out, like, for example, kiljardi, who got the backward gold. The awkward part I find about this is, like, Delhi, because of the Dome of Faith build, they wouldn't play an infantry comp. And that type of gold spawn that MarineLorD got gets shut down by infantry comps a lot better than Ghazi.
Yeah, and it just like I know this from playing Delhi too. You just get tunnel visioned into the Ghazi though. You know, like you, especially like when you go Dome of the Faith, you're like, well, I didn't go Tower of Victory, so I don't really want to make spears. I don't really want to make archers unless I have to. So I think I'm just gonna pump a metric ton of Ghazi and see how it works out.
Yeah, and it's quite funny because like Ghazi on this map can be very good. It's the same reason why French is incredible on this map. Not just the Pro Scouts meta. It's if you look at the tree lines, none of them are safe, right? Like if you actually click on the TC range, it doesn't protect any of these, and they're all small. So you don't have that natural burrowing that you get on like a Dry Arabia. You don't have TC range to fully protect you. Raiders are good here, so do expect to see that out of kiljardi. We do have Dome of Faith, so nothing out of the ordinary here on either side. Question mark is whether he's going to follow it up with full-on aggression or if it's just going to be poke and a castle play out of Delhi.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it just seems like with the Malians, you really don't want to fight them once you get to castle. You don't want to get to that mid-castle area of the Malians where you end up having this, and they end up having this pseudo late-game economy full of all of this food and gold per minute. It just feels like, why would you want to subject yourself to that? You know, so maybe kiljardi, if he does have a lot of those Ghazi Raiders, maybe he really takes the battle to him. I'm curious to see from MarineLorD. I mean, obviously, there is a professional scouts into Farimba kind of play. Or do we see a cow boom?
I think we're going to see Pro Scouts, and then depending on kiljardi's options, like he'll decide, right? Like this is an interesting thing. I think either can work depending on what kiljardi wants to do. If he wants to turn it into a longer game, you could just justify Fulani. The logic being is you'll just have better economy. If your opponent tries to do an all-in, Pro Scouts will still get you enough food back that you can then play into Farimba, and that initial surge of troops will get you out of the problem, right? Like at this stage in the game, let's say Delhi only build Ghazi, and then you react as Malians by only building Freeborn. The Freeborn are going to contest quite well just because of their raw HP stats. The reality is, though, obviously, you as kiljardi are going to have to add another unit. And if it's spears, you're going to get counted by Mansa Musafadi. If it's archers, you'll get counted by Freeborn. So, like, I do really like the Farimba build at the moment. I think it's quite funny because you go back, like, what, 2 months? And everyone's like, well, this is trash. Worst landmark rework ever. Why would you ever do this? And then people, like, they just started to think about the stat implications. Like, no. This has some potency if I can find resources, and Pro Scouts really was that gift horse for the community to start doing these.
And what you talked about the Farimba, I think, is the most important thing because it's flexible, right? It's like back in season 3 when everybody complained about the Farimba, right? You could make anything to counter what your opponent has at the given juncture, right? So getting that kind of area, I mean, obviously you're paying 1,800 resources to do it, so you get a little bit of a tempo issue, but you have the ability to counter anything your opponent is giving you. So kiljardi is going to go with those Ghazi Raiders. MarineLorD did go with that professional scouts. I was trying to add a little bit of suspense to it with like a cow boom, but like we both knew like I was saying garbage, right? Like
Yeah,
I think we both were pretty aware.
I mean, no one wants cows anymore, right? Like they lost their relevance in the Malian kingdom. They now have to get employed as observers, right, to stay alive. It's just a reality check that having guys that beat the crap out of guys is maybe better than a cow that stands there looking a little bit confused. And the cool thing in this matchup is like actually I think Mansa Musafadi goes a long way. It's a raidy type unit. The reality is like I'm expecting more than freeboard here because unless for some weird reason kiljardi builds 40 archers, which honestly this man will build 40 archers on any Civ in feudal age. Unless it's mass archers, Mans Musafadi makes too much sense because you counter men at arms, you counter lances, you counter war elephants. You actually do really well against a lot of the potential options on the table for kiljardi.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I will say, though, a little bit of a warning, KP, if you're going to talk bad about cows, the stream will go off the rails. We do have a cow in the background. So anything, that you're saying about the bovines...
So you're saying if we moan about them more, then, like, he'll zoom on a cow later and play violin music and, like, add a tear graphic to it? I'm fine with that. Keeps it variable,
content. That's good content, if anything. Now, really quickly... I want to take a look now with the warrior scouts. When they do get a deer, I want to know how fast they go. Because it looked like as that warrior scout was going to the town center with that carcass, it looked relatively speedy.
Yeah. So, usually when they pick up the deer and you click on them, they actually like, if we could hear the audio noise, like when you click a unit, it says something. When they're running with deer, they usually just make vroom vroom noises like an F1 racing car. They're that fast. So yeah, it's pretty obnoxious because it just makes it very difficult to chase them down. We've already got a beautiful Donala here. MarineLorD is going to stop the first Scholar Cap there. Really big deal for kiljardi's timings here. And we do have Donzos coming out. The interesting part is that MarineLorD started adding in javelins for a grand total of 0 reasons.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're seeing all of the Ghazis and you're like, oh, maybe javelin throwers will be good. But I think he's expecting MarineLorD the stereotypical, Ghazi into archer kind of stuff because he's already seen the Donzos from MarineLorD, right? So he's kind of like metagaming a little bit, trying to do a little bit of a heads-up play. It's just ending up not going to be that viable for him. And now with that first sacred site getting captured on that northern side, that southern one did get denied, but he did get one of them, right? So get a little bit of a gold trickle. I just don't think it's going to match up. 1.14? Wow. You're telling me a warrior scout with a deer carcass is faster than a longbow. Get out of here, man. The Malian, I'm so
Hey, man, like, in longbow's defense, all right, it's not because we English people are noodle armed, right? Like, that dude carrying about that deer, that has 350 food on it, all right? But a longbowman has to carry around an infinite bag of holding full of arrows, okay? So give us a break, all right? Those things are heavy. When you've got, like, 1,000 arrows, it weighs you down.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the age-old parable of that endless breadbasket, right? With all of those arrows that are coming out. So, yeah, okay. I get the 1.12. I guess I can get it. But with MarineLorD now starting to diversify his composition with those javelin throwers, I see a stable out there as well. Maybe he starts to add a little bit of sofa to counteract the archers. What's up? Tell me. Talk to me.
We've been talking about Farimba this whole time.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a very rare type of Farimba game that doesn't come out very often. But if Castle Age does come in, it would be there for MarineLorD. And that's the Javelineer version.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember the last time I actually watched a pro scaling javelins. Like, most of the time, Malians have been ignoring this unit recently.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the way it just picked off that archer really quickly. So maybe it ends up being okay. Kind of expected kiljardi to go into the archers, and he might have done it a little bit late, but now he has the javelin throwers and enough mass of them to counteract all of the archers that kiljardi is going to make a little bit later down the road. But you're exactly right. If he does go with those javelineers, right, those javelins get poison strapped onto them, which is just a wild experience for anything the Delhi is going to be trying to make.
Yeah, and this is like the interesting thing because there is one move for the Delhi that like the Malians definitely cannot counter. Right, and now it's gonna shock you, but the unit that specifically definitely only the Malians can't beat is war elephants. Because because you don't have crossbows, right? Like that is the golden solution. If your opponent gets castle, they get elephants, you build crossbows. Can't do that as Malians. Javelineers can get poison. It's still really not the same. So I think that's another part of why you're seeing MarineLorD posture very aggressively. He's getting great transitions to punish kiljardi. And the reality check is like playing a longer feudal because your opponent went Dome of Faith is better for you. Just think about that for a second. Why? Because once Delhi have got all their free techs, Dome of Faith is useless until they age up.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And he's probably at that point where most of the technologies are going to be completed if they're not already, right? So definitely that Dome of the Faith just becomes, although you get those scholars at half price, I get that, but you're exactly right. It just becomes transitionally and indirectly, it becomes that rather useless landmark, right?
Yeah.
So kiljardi is continuing to fight for these sacred sites. You know, he's getting a little bit at the top, a little bit at the bottom, but he doesn't have that super stable passive gold income like the Malians do, because all those houses and those pit mines, Delhi is so focused on the sacred sites, right? So those pit mines have been untouched for the entirety of the game for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that's another part why MarineLorD went for this comp, is like, if you had a more defensive pit mine location, maybe you would have seen him be a bit more chill, a bit more greedy. But like, we're just getting a classic Malian build here, right? And I don't think it's going to be Fulani to support it, but it does follow the same ideology of old school Malians, which is lob a giant feudal army, let your opponent keep headbutting you, headbutt, 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 build it bigger, and then just upgrade all of it. Now, Javelins, not really the unit you want to play deep into Castle Age, but good enough base damage that you'll take the full veterancy upgrade of this, right? Like, there are some civs that have to discard some of those units. They feel worthless. Malian's really not one of them with this hybridized comp.
And especially, I mean, with these javelin throwers too, you can expect when the Delhi does go up to Castle Age. I mean, we talked about the war elephants, of course, but they're going to be going with a lot of heavily armored units, right? Men-at-arms, because you don't need to get that Castle Age upgrade. So having those javelin throwers, and especially javelineers, if they do get poisoned, you're going to end up taking them down pretty quickly. Now those javelin throwers are starting to kite all of these Delhi spearmen that are here. You've got Donzos making the front line, just trying not to dive for the most part. And look at that flank over there on the southeastern side, but MarineLorD is well aware of it, and that Ghazi is not going to get on those javelin throwers. There's a lot of bullseye targets on those archers. He needs enough Donzos to keep those javelin throwers safe, though.
Yeah, that split kind of helped MarineLorD out, right? Just peels one side of a group of Donzos, means he keeps a bunch in reserve for the second wave here. It's still a pressure point fight for kiljardi. He has a lot of archers to work with, but the Ghazi are pretty much all gone, right? At this stage, you need to get a lot more cavalry out here. Otherwise, the javelins will simply win this.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, they can go safely back home too, right? I mean, in terms of the amount of Ghazis on the map, kiljardi has 4 with 1 in the queue. So the Donzos kind of did their role, so to speak, right? They were arrow fodder. They were able to counteract a little bit of a surround if kiljardi was trying to do that with the Ghazi Raiders, and now they're going to start to back up. So overall, I consider this a pretty positive for MarineLorD for sure.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because like game 1, we talked about Javelin as the valuable unit that you can't replace. You should protect at all costs. Now, MarineLorD could replace as many Javelins as need be, but it is that same concept the Byzantines had, where this is my core. This is what matters most. The Donzos are simply there to be thrown away. The Javelin mass is there to continually be scaled. What worries me is like when you get in these long feudal ages, you know how it is, right? Like you both have to scale archers, really, to compete. But the problem here, doing this against Malians, is their archer count as yours. Like, this is getting kind of ridiculous. If you think about the value in this army for MarineLorD, we are reaching the crack point where kiljardi won't be able to compete because competing any longer is just giving MarineLorD an even bigger win.
Yeah, and I mean, especially when you're taking a look at the count too, kiljardi's able to mass up those archers. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, he's massing them up right into that counter. Delhi trying to get an outpost there. Might end up being delayed just a little bit, but archers are continuing. They're trying to get onto these javelin throwers. A perfect line formation, KP, so these javelin throwers don't get a lot of that overkill, and they're able to take down these Ghazis just because of the sheer amount of base damage that there are. Again, this is the second time in a row where we're going to talk about it. There just weren't enough Ghazis for this.
No, it's like we're kind of at the stage where you wish you had Tower of Victory, right? Like Tower of Victory would have actually given you a comp, which would have been Archer Spears. kiljardi isn't doing Spears, which is kind of funny because the Ghazi aren't doing anything. The Spears would at least have a better shot of reaching the backline. It's always tricky against Donzos because they have melee armor, so they just hold a bit better here. But I think that's the edge kiljardi needs to look for. Is like he has Bloomery Tech coming through. He has these melee techs organically that MarineLorD won't think about getting. Instead, he just keeps headbanging these fights. Ghazi count non-existent, and the javelin numbers are just taking control. Like at this stage, he has more javelins than kiljardi collectively has full army.
Yeah, and I mean, just how quickly those archers are getting decimated, right? Look at this line formation. Look at the difference. Look how many archers went down on that one volley.
Was that a line formation? I thought that was like a dashed line formation, you know, because there's all those gaps between each of them.
Yeah, I mean, the geometry could certainly be argued. You know, I definitely agree with that. But just because the ability to do that, right, means that overkill isn't there. So MarineLorD is sitting there continuing to up his javelin thrower count, while kiljardi was at 38 archers, and they're cut in half.
Yeah, and now we're just watching these OP javelins kill a building, right? It's like I don't know how that realistically works. I guess you throw so many sticks at a structure. Oh, Cal. So yeah, this is Cal's relevance. He cast the qualifiers, and that was his appearance in the main event. But yeah, look at that. I think the way this works, Tim, is that you throw so many sticks at the other building full of sticks that the weight makes the structure fall over. I think that's how you kill it with javelins.
Yeah, I think it's just like the pressure of it, right? The foundation is kind of thrown away. It's kind of like Jenga, but you're just adding more pieces of wood, essentially. And then all of a sudden, the structure ends up crashing down. I don't know. If there's an engineer in chat, they're probably going to tell us how big of idiots we are. But now that he's getting this little bit of a cow boom, the first time, essentially 17 minutes into the game, just about that first time that pit mine, that gold, ended up getting vacated.
Yeah, but there's going to be a bigger vacation taken by kiljardi. Not just by his front eco lines, but a vacation from this series. A much needed one right now. He's getting a little bit of raiding going on the backside. This posturing, I mean, it's crazy. MarineLorD, I don't think he realizes right now that he's just A-clicking a house. This is the dive point.
Yeah,
Scout sees
think,
it.
Oh, there it is. That house of learning. You better start to go over there before those books get on the bookshelf. Let's see if we can find them.
We gamers, we don't read. Go.
These javelin throwers also can sit under a town center because of how much ranged armor that they have. One full volley isn't going to take a javelin thrower down. It needs a second full volley. So that House of Learning ends up getting completed, right? We're going to get some of those technologies. Man, those scholars wish they could read a little bit faster to try to get some of these techs. And kiljardi's starting to add some of those Castle Age units, right? He's starting to add some Lancers. He's starting to add some men-at-arms. But against 55 javelin throwers, I think you're going to need a lot more.
And we spent all these minutes talking about Farimba, but the reality is the feudal age went on too long. There's just not enough food left from Pro Scouts, so it is going to be the good old classic Kung Fu Lani, because I'm expecting a follow-up here to revolve around a lot of melee units. Probably going to be so far, and we might even see some Musafadi layered in, considering everything kiljardi is now building would be counted by those melee boys.
Yeah, and don't forget the sofas, too. I mean, obviously, you can add Musafadi, but what's nice about those sofas is they have a little bit of extra damage against infantry. So if you have some men-at-arms back there, it's even a better counter. Some of these guys are continuing to get picked off by those javelin throwers. That archer is no longer a corpse. He's just a bunch of sticks on the ground. And a military count of 71 to 47, now with the quickest Castle Age upgrades that you have ever seen, as you see at the top right part of your screen. So not only is he getting rid of these buildings, he's putting the pressure on kiljardi. He did it all while getting that Castle Age transition and getting that unit strength.
So here's the thing for Delhi. Thumbs up, you get all your techs for free. Very nice. But what you don't get for free is the units themselves, right? You kind of wish you were Ottomans here, because what this posturing from MarineLorD is doing is hitting towards the eco and forcing out of time. Dive comes in, and I think this was premature. kiljardi just lost practically the entire front line. The javelin should be able to mop up here. There's still a bunch of scouts in the mixture, which upgrading them will make him a counter into the archers. This looks cooked. We already have a scout watching on the south side, so you see the berry gathering from the Delhi. And this is going to reach to that back goal. At which stage, kiljardi is just going to end up running around his own base, doing very little.
Yeah, and you know that's kind of the ball game when you have villagers starting to run around. And ball game it is. Game, set, match, blouses. For dodgeball reference, thank you very much. A 3-0 for MarineLorD taking down kiljardi rather impressively, rather quickly. Let's take a look at some of these stats. Obviously, the food is there, but with the pit mines, KP, and all of this passive gold income, look at the gold difference. Obviously, kiljardi doesn't need that much because of the technologies, but you're seeing a glaring difference. It's double the gold regardless.
Yeah, and we began this game by going, well, it seems like a bold strategy, Cotton. See if it'll pay off, picking mines into Delhi. But the reality here is that the way that you play Tower of Victory is very different to Dome of Faith. I think that is the big takeaway. You have to adjust the game plan. And also we just never really got to that point where kiljardi was raiding per se. It never hit that point where he was blitzing into the pit mines early enough. So just good control by
Right.
MarineLorD, a classic Donzo Javelin build to get him a swift 3-0, which I believe in total was about an hour long. Actually, in game time, I think it might have been less.
Yeah, I think some of these matchups ended up being pretty quick. Now, with the Malians here in Feudal Age, you kind of expected, as if you're somebody who's coming back to AoE4 after a little bit of time, you're like, oh, this is an easy 2-1. kiljardi might get some momentum for a reverse sleep, but not so fast, my friend. And KP, I love the fact that we can bounce off dodgeball references to each other. You're so great, man.
Oh,
This is a treat to
you're
be
making it
casting with you.
easy,
It
my
really
dear.
is.
You make it easy. But no matter how easy we make it for each other, we couldn't make it look as easy as MarineLorD here. This guy is just making a statement claim that he's still the chimp, right? But we have to remember, although his series against this Scandinavian I've been told recently Finnish people aren't Scandinavian. This Norse lad may have looked dominant. We have to remember that getting here wasn't as dominant. Baltoon actually took him all the way to 5 games. So although we've seen a very clean MarineLorD, it's important to remember he's not impenetrable. He's not unkillable at all. But for now, he's safe. He's sunk it in. He's parked in the playoffs after that one. Great start to him, but we still have plenty of series to come. I believe up next, if I'm not mistaken, are we taking a look at Group B?
Yeah, I think it's going to be.
Was it
Lab,
Group
how
C?
about that? A little Group B, nailed it. I think it's going to be Puppy Paw and Vortex is next. Is that correct?
It is. But before we get to that, I've got my subtitle typer ready. We're going to be having an interview with MLorD himself.
All right.
Hello, MarineLorD. Congrats,
Hello.
mate. Easy peasy start to the day. Let's talk a little bit about the series there, because I heard that you and kiljardi have been scrimming together a lot. Was it going any better in practice for him than it did in this series?
I mean, in practice, I try some more stuff, so you can win some mob, but most of the time I win pretty one-sidedly, I would say.
How did you feel about the
I think.
draft? Okay. How do you feel about the draft here? Because I was looking at the draft, and the thing I said is it almost felt like kiljardi's draft was pre-pro scouts, whereas yours seemed to focus more around the current meta.
I mean, I don't know, I felt like my draft was okay, but I felt like after getting HRE against bees, I would get Malians against either Delhi or Abbasid, and same for English, and on paper it doesn't feel the best. But at the same time, I practiced a lot of Malians and English against both Delhi and Abbasid, and even like before, I thought it was very bad for Malians and English. And nowadays, if I don't make any mistakes, and I'm very, very clean on the game plan, I think it's a pretty close matchup. But if you make one mistake, then Delhi just kills you, and it's very unfair, right? But if you actually play close to perfectly, I think you can do it with Mali or English.
And talk to me a little bit about your previous series against Baltoon. I was saying, obviously, that was a very tight series, 3-2. Starting the tournament off with that type of series, being so tight, being the champion you are, was that kind of like a little bit of jolt, a wake-up call? Like, oh, actually, these boys have been practicing. I need to be a little bit more careful with my game.
No, I think I'm always slightly weaker in the early part of the tournament. I started practicing like 2 weeks ago. Usually I get very good when I practice like 1 month. So I still have 2 more weeks to get to playoffs, and that's what I wanted to have. So I didn't really care. Even if I finished second seed, it would have been pretty bad on paper, right? But at the end of the day, I'm gonna play against Group B. And in Group B, they have only strong players. So no matter if I finish second or first, it doesn't really matter. And I want to win the tournament. I don't really care about winning my group. So I'm just trying to practice well. Baltoon played pretty well, I think. So it's not only me who fucked up. I think he played pretty well. Especially in game 3, I think his game plan was pretty good. Game 1, I think it's more on me, playing pretty bad, but can happen. And I think game 2, 4, and 5 against Baltoon were very one-sided because I just knew exactly what to do. So it was not really scary. Like, it was obvious which matchup would come up, and I knew I would win those matchups. So obviously losing 2 maps is never a good feeling, but at the end of the day, the goal is to win the series, right?
Yeah, And talking about feelings here, like looking at the roster of players, who's the biggest threat in your eyes? I know you're like, oh, I'm going to win it all, but if there's someone you're maybe keep an eye on that could maybe take you down, like, is there someone that stands out from the pack to you here in Masters Winter?
I mean, it's a very volatile beta, so honestly, all the top players can be pretty hard, I think, especially in best of 5, but I'm still pretty confident. I would say the one that improved the most recently, or like the two, I would say are B and Vortex. But B is still very weird, right? So I feel like B just plays a lot and plays pretty weirdly like before, right? So he's just a good version of himself. Vortex, I think, he played some Age of Mythology, and it helped him grow. He grew a brain, I think. Before he didn't have a brain, and now you have a small one. But actually, I think he plays pretty good, and I think before he would just go YOLO all the time and kill himself. Nowadays, he plays it a bit smarter, and even though at the end of the day, most of the game you still like it's still Vortex because he does some stupid shit. Most of early games and mid game, I think he plays way better than before. And I've been practicing with him a lot because obviously Lucifon is not playing anymore, and I didn't have Anoton since Anoton is he had some health issues. So yeah, I played a lot with him, and Vortex is for sure very strong. I think he's gonna finish first of his group.
Wow. Big statement coming out there. I mean, I think it also maybe helped B as well. Like we talked about, Vortex going to Myth. B went all over the place, right? Like Stormgate,
Yeah.
Zero Space. I guess like taking a break, playing these different games, it refreshes your mind and maybe gives you a different perspective. I know for you it was fighting games. Curious, last question. Has there been a secret game you've been using to chill out, to reset? I know last time it used to be fighting games you'd regularly go for.
I don't know. Honestly, this month I was pretty just bored and sad in my corner. I can't really move because I have a broken feet. Usually I don't like to, move a
too.
lot, but I like to still do some stuff, Right now I'm just sitting in my chair pretty much almost all day long. And that's kind of boring, but no, I don't even have a game. I'm just watching shows, watching movies, and playing Age of Empires whenever someone is up.
What a hard life. Sitting around playing games all day for a living.
No, it's very easy,
I
but
totally
it's a
tough
very good
living,
life, but
MarineLorD.
usually it's better, I think. That's what I'm
All right,
saying.
buddy.
But it's still a
I'm
chill
gonna
life.
let you I'm gonna let you get on with your day though. Big congrats on the
Yeah,
win. We need to get to the next
thanks.
series, but good to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll talk
Yeah,
again soon.
bye bye.